At Relentless Digital, we believe in breaking barriers and driving innovation. That's why we are extremely proud to sponsor the Power Women of the Trades podcast, supporting the voices and success of women in the home service industry. Together, we're creating a future where talent shines, regardless of gender, and diversity thrives. Join our journey at relentless-digital.com and always be relentless in your pursuit of excellence.
This episode of Power Women of the Trades is also brought to you by Forrest Perry of Forrest Perry Digital Marketing. Want to generate more leads for your service business? Trust his team to deliver quality new customer leads and protect your brand online. Check out perrymarketing.com today.
Hello everyone. We want to give a quick shout out to our amazing partner, Rilla, the game changer in the home service industry. Rilla's virtual ride-along software means no more physical ride-alongs. With Rilla, you can code your team virtually 100 times faster and boost your close sale rates like never before. Don't miss out. Join the movement today and watch your sales soar. Visit rilla.com/PWT to learn more.
Welcome to Power Women of the Trades podcast. This show is all about breaking barriers and changing the game. Our guests will feature some of today's most successful female entrepreneurs and other advocates of our industry as well. Because if there's one thing we know for sure, female-led entrepreneurship drives change on multiple levels. We want to empower women in the trade industry like you so you can maximize your potential, stay balanced, achieve long-term success, and claim ownership over your life. Let's get started.
Welcome back to Power Woman of the Trades podcast with Cassie and Heather. Today, we're with our good friend, Kathy Nielsen, the chicken lady. I felt like you're my favorite chicken lady, which is...
Do you know more than one?
Well, you know, I live in Oklahoma, so yeah.
Everybody knows chickens in Oklahoma.
But not self-proclaimed chicken ladies, maybe.
Yes.
You're the only one that's like the proclaim. It's funny because this cracks me up because I, like back when I just really started like meeting people in the industry, I think I ran across your website or something like years ago. And I was like, what a chicken lady speaks. Okay. You know, and then I moved on and was like, whatever. Then a few years later, I met you at an event. And then a few years later, you came to Quality. And then one day someone was like, hey, I saw you had the chicken lady at your shop. And I was like, you don't even know that like the same industry people that I know. So like everybody calls her the chicken lady.
When I go to on-sites, I'll walk in, they're like, we don't know your name. We all just call you chicken lady. I go, that's exactly why I did it, because no one remembers my name or they spell it wrong. So
whatever works, right?
Yeah.
Well, cool. So, you know, we have had you on the show before, but you were with Leslie and I back, you know, a long time ago. And so I definitely am excited to have you back on the show. And we are, you know, always have new listeners. And I know that you have a pretty cool story, but then also you have an awesome business that hopefully we can introduce some people to and potentially help you. I think the biggest thing, well, let's back up. Okay. Number one, Kathy, how'd you get in the trades?
How'd I get in the trades? So my former life, I was in hunting and shooting manufacturing. So gun cases, clothing, that stuff. And when that kind of went away in this country, I just looked for where I could affect change. And I knew retail wasn't that. And a heating cooling company asked me to come work for them. And we were together on a board. It was a youth hunt board. And so they knew my organizational skills and asked me to come. So I started out as a CSR dispatcher in heating and cooling in Iowa.
How long ago was that?
Oh gosh, I've been doing this almost 10 years. I was a GM for like 6, so it's probably 25 years ago.
Oh wow.
Oh gosh, how did it lead you from where you started into what you're doing now? Because that's a major shift, I guess, in where you started.
Yeah, well, I kind of came up through the ranks, CSR dispatcher, office manager. I did bookkeeping, and then a competitor in our area in Iowa asked me to come be their GM. And And so at that time, they had one part-time CSR, and they were maybe million and a half. And the owner didn't really want to be there. He was kind of non-existent. He was ready to be done. And so I had grown that to about 5.5, 6 million, and tried to buy it. And the owner and I didn't agree on value. He wanted a lifestyle, and I wanted a fair price.
Right.
And so he sold it to two of my technicians, and I put the word out that I was looking. I ended up in a plumbing shop in Texas. I lived in a camp behind the plumbing shop for a year while I decided if I was going to move my family. And when I was GM, we did 5 software conversions in 6 years, which if you've ever done a software conversion,
Oh my gosh, that's a lot.
It's brutal. So I got to be really good at that. And I have
It's
kind of
5
an
and 6
accounting
is a
brain.
lot.
It was terrible. So, and then the company, the plumbing shop I went to was one of the first users of ServiceTitan. And I was in a camper by myself. So people were asking me to help them. And nights and weekends, that's what I did. And then I started doing this full time. And Aura called me and asked me to go help somebody. That was my first on-site. And then it went from there. And we do other, besides ServiceTitan, we do Housecall Pro and some others as well. I'm just really known in the ServiceTitan arena.
So, like, I know
Yes,
there's a
I
few
think everybody
pieces,
is very well aware.
yeah, there's a few pieces that like I know for sure that or you help with ServiceTitan, but there are other things that you do or you just focus on like the implementation of the softwares.
No, we do bookkeeping for companies that maybe they're small enough they can't justify a full-time, or maybe they need to let somebody go or somebody quit and they need an interim. 2 people on my team, one's an accountant by trade, one's QuickBooks Pro certified. She's a bookkeeper by trade, and they don't have to teach us trades and accounting. So it's just beneficial. We teach a lot of their people they hire how to do it. I do a CSR boot camp.
Okay.
So do a lot of tech training. So it's just kind of all that
What's
operation.
involved with your CSR boot camp training? What's all involved in that?
So I like doing the one full day. Some companies will have me in to do it just for them, and I might do like a half day. So I do part of their people in the morning and part in the afternoon. First half of it is all about communication, because if you know how you like to communicate, you can hear how others like to communicate, because amazing customer service isn't necessarily the same for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if I have somebody on the phone that wants bottom line and I'm trying to tell them all the fluff, they're done.
Right.
And so it's really, the first part's about communication. The second part is all scripting and how, you know, not to use the 4 big words, can't, won't, don't, and why, and give them other ways to spin things. And
right. Okay. So one of my favorite strategies, is it strategies or concepts, is your hit by a truck theory.
Yes.
And so it's funny because I feel like I've said that forever. And then it makes me think of Grey's Anatomy. But anyways, so,
because it can happen.
Yeah. So like, but you know, it's so important. I don't think people really realize like, the unfortunate truth is that if something were to happen to you in your job, or, you know, you're replaceable, and everyone wants to say that, and like, you should feel like you should be, you know, like I, as the owner of the company, Oscar and I are both replaceable. Like if something happens to us, there are measures in place to make sure that the 90 people that work here are still taken care of. And so, and there has to be a plan. And I think often people are like, you're replaceable, and take it as such a negative.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be like that, but you need to realize that like, you can't just keep everything that you know stuck in your head. So then when you're out on vacation, the whole rest of the company's screwed.
Yeah, people use it as a threat. And the other thing is, people believe that if they share their knowledge, then they won't be needed. But what I really try to help people understand is, if you can share your knowledge, and we can have it in a way that if something did happen, someone can step in and do it, then we get to have you do things that are wired for your superpower, and they get to do the things that are wired for their superpower. And so it's not that you're not needed. We can just raise people up to do what they're just wired to do.
Yeah.
Oh,
And
I love that so much.
I do too, because I always think about our team specifically, and that's something that I think everyone does better at now. But then I also think about myself as an employee, you know, a long time ago in other industries. And sometimes I think transparency and communication with your team is from the leaders is what helps that feeling like it's a negative, because you should want to share and be able to teach. We just did a training today with our meeting with our leadership team today. And one of the things that I had wrote on the board was, if your absence causes chaos, then you're not leading. You are failing as a leader, because your absence, everyone is so reliant on you, and you've got to be able to let go of the control and let people take some ownership, some accountability, empower them, and teaching people what you can do isn't a threat to who you are. To me, it shows even more value of what you're capable of doing.
Well, in a lot of companies.
Yeah, I was just going to say that.
I just went to Dave Ramsey Entree Leadership. It's one of my things I do every year to fill my bucket. And he talked about when his CFO left and said he was going to be leaving, they said, okay, hire your replacement and train him, and you can't leave till he's ready, and it's the same kind of thing. You always want to be able to teach your replacement, right? You always want to have somebody in the works. And I think especially owners are really bad at putting down what they do every day. They're really bad at it, because a lot of them aren't like, it's not like they do payroll or they dispatch, or, it's not these solid things that this is what we do. And I think, it still has to go on. My husband's best friend had a big marketing firm in Des Moines, Iowa, and 5 of their top executives went over to Vermeer to meet with them, and their plane crashed on the way back, all of them gone. And then now who figures that out, and it's tragic and terrible, and you don't want that, but it's just a reality.
It is the reality, unfortunately. And that's why it's like, unfortunately, like it just is reality, because there's other people that, I was talking to someone the other day, and we were talking about, when someone passes away, right? And we feel like if you're going through it and that person passed away and you're going through it, you feel like the world has stopped. And I remember thinking, like, when my grandma passed away, for example, I was so upset, and I felt so like I couldn't go in public and I couldn't do this, because I felt like I had just like stopped, but the world was still going, and the world still keeps going on. And so it's hard, it feels morbid, or it feels scary, or it feels, like a threat to have these types of conversations. And it can't be looked at that, because we need to be able to protect ourselves, protect our businesses, protect the future, the occupations of the other people who work for this company or your company or whatever company. Like, there has to be a plan, because if something happens, and that's something that I'm very straightforward with our team. My brother works for another company, and one day he had said something, and it's a different industry and all of that. And he's like, what if something were to happen and to this person that owns the company, and then I'm out of job? And I said, I wouldn't just assume that.
Right.
I wouldn't just assume that you're out of job, because Quality's employees would not be out of a job. There's a plan, and there's, we've got a trust and a plan, and like directors and people who can, like, that this ship does not rely on just Oscar and I. And can you imagine it at 90 employees if it was?
Yeah. And the other thing is, the company, like, your customers just don't go away. Everything just doesn't go away because you're no longer there. And like, when you try to sell your company, they want to know how reliant is the company on you. If you leave for 6 months, is the company still fine?
Yep.
And that's a matrix or metrics.
I think that's really important.
Yeah, it's important to consider that, I think, because it is something that we don't want to think about, we don't want to talk about, but it has to be talked about, because especially at a company with, 60, 80, 90 employees, you want to make sure that you have put the things in place as the owner of the company to make sure that the company can continue forward should something happen. I mean, you never know. I lost a key employee once, and we were prepared to handle it. But if we hadn't had and I refer to it as, that if you get hit by a bus file, it's basically the Bible of everything that someone would need to know to take over and run the company. And I think that's critical for every company to have in place, so that there is a plan, even as, that there are going to be people that need time to grieve, or, something happens, or, maybe it's not a death, but it's a severe illness where somebody has to take some time away. You need to have a plan in place, and it needs to be ahead of time, not reactive to the situation.
Yeah. And so lately on, the different convention circuit that I speak at, lately they've been having me talk about similar, but we talk about the people on your bus, right? And are they the right fit? And I think your process and procedures lean into that, because if you don't have them down, how can you make sure that person's on the right seat? And also you want to create avatars for those seats, right? And so when you're hiring, you already have the avatar of, this is the person I want, this is the behavior I want. And so if you're trying to hire somebody that's just really amazing at typing or what, accounting or whatever, but you have nothing to give them, you're kind of setting them up failure if their wheelhouse isn't to create them.
Yeah. So another one of your signature concepts is, I love this. So you know how
I didn't know I had signature concepts. I'm so excited.
You know how I got your signature concepts? ChatGPT.
Oh.
I love ChatGPT for things like this, but I sent ChatGPT. I mean, we're always prepared with some type of document or something for our interviews, but I know you. And so I was like, I need some fresh, some different, like, I didn't want to just be like, hey, chicken lady, you know what I mean? So I sent your website link to ChatGPT and said, today, Heather and I are interviewing Kathy Nielsen. Please analyze her website and give me some talking points. It's so crazy. And the things that you can prompt ChatGPT to do, right? And long story short, ChatGPT says you have signature concepts.
Interesting, because I was speaking at a convention a few months ago, and he said, well, I just out of curiosity put you in ChatGPT to see how to introduce you. And all it talked about was my commercial chicken farming.
You got to prompt. So that's a good one. You have to prompt ChatGPT correctly. If you just say, introduce the chicken lady, then. But I need to name my ChatGPT. And yesterday, side note, I accidentally had my ChatGPT read it to me, and the voice was a woman. And so I'm like, well, now it needs to be a woman. Anyways, so your other signature concept is building the best flock.
Well, that kind of leads into, that's a way better word. I'm going to use that because I like that. To build your flock. When I say build your avatar, building your flock. That's awesome.
Yeah. And then your third signature concept, consistency builds accuracy.
I say that a million times a day, I swear.
It says consistency builds accuracy is one of your mantras. Can you share a real life example of this?
Well, that leads back to the process and procedures too, right? So if everybody's doing it different, how do you know you're getting consistent data? So like when I was on site at your shop, we went through all your settings and your procedure on how you book calls and things like that. Because if you do everything different or the settings are different, then you're going to get different KPIs and different can decisions.
Literally make me crazy. Like if you depending on which report you are looking at to this point in life, like I have in ServiceTitan, I have the dashboard, and then I have to trust the dashboard. And then I have a special jobs report that is my report that's locked that no one can touch. And then I use that as a report. And then I have like some CSR reports or whatever. But I hate that. I understand why, because certain people want to look at certain things a different way. But I hate how sometimes the data can be two different numbers depending on which report. And that's definitely something that's important. So like about a year ago or so, we had to just be like, everyone follows the dashboard. Because sometimes we would say, someone would say, well, the close rate is this. And then, the sales manager would be like, oh, it is absolutely not that. And we're like, yes, the heck it is, and so that's a really big thing, especially if you use ServiceTitan, because I always say the ServiceTitan data or ServiceTitan software is so robust that how you want to see that specific KPI is capable of being measured multiple ways.
Right. And you have to, people all the time, I'll say, what do you want? And then let's figure out how to get there. You have to do the same thing every time. If you have somebody booking a lead just as a job, or you have somebody booking a lead as a lead, your matrix on your dashboard comes out completely different. And so it's got to be consistent. So yeah, consistency breeds accuracy. That's my favorite mantra. The ChatGPT is right.
ChatGPT's got you down, girl. I'm going to put myself in there later and be like, what are my mantras?
Yeah, right. Maybe you don't want to know.
My ChatGPT always says, Cassie, you're a little sassy. And I'm like, really?
I listened to this one podcast and he always always says he always thanks ChatGPT like it's a person. And he's like, I don't know why I do that. Well, then one day I happened to listen to something and they said saying thank you and please is costing millions to ChatGPT.
I saw that and I was like, well, you can't take it out of me. I say thank you all the time. You know, my favorite thing to say thank you to also is when you talk to Siri, which my phone's going to start saying something now. And then she'll tell you, and then I'll say thank you. And she's like, you're welcome, Cassie.
Right.
I'm like, thank you. Sometimes I'm just in the closet I'm talking to myself through Siri. So what is 2025 looking for you? What other things do you have coming up?
Well, I really, really would like to find another person for my team. Finding the right person, that's harder because the hardest part for me is I can't teach experience. And so much of what I bring to the table is just from having been in the industry and sat in those seats. And, when I was on site with you, I don't come in there and just talk software. We talk about what, the big picture and what is it you're trying to accomplish and those kind of things. It's just not about just the software. So that's one of my goals because I'd really like to go to a 3-day work week.
Well, I think if you set the stage when you're going to an on-site and get the foundation of what the company's built on and just get an overview, you kind of would have to do that in order to build the software to what they're looking for. Because everybody, I think, uses ServiceTitan a little differently. And so,
and I think she said like it'd be hard to it's hard to replicate her. That's got all of the experience with that. And I can imagine because I feel like I don't even know ServiceTitan. Actually, I tried to book a job yesterday and I was like, I'm back to I did not book it. I was like, it's been a minute, but there's so many things that they tell me to stay out of now. But I feel like random question, is it just us or does everyone's memberships sometimes a shit show?
Most of them are, memberships are my jam. I love doing memberships. I already had 3 Zooms today on memberships and I have 4 part-time people.
Answer right now.
Yeah. And I have 4 part-time people that repair memberships for people. And I just really dig them, but they are something that when I go through them with somebody, I want them to see, here's my suggestions and here's why. I really want them to understand the why. And then if they say, no, we want to do it this way, that's absolutely okay. And I will create them that way. But I want them to understand the impact of their decisions. And I think most people don't understand the impact of their decisions.
Yeah. I think that
I would agree.
Yeah. And our memberships really aren't a crap show. They were when you came. Remember? I was like,
yes.
And then still all the time someone will be like, I think the hardest thing for our team is that we set them up the right way and then they're set up the right way. But like, let's say last July or August, we probably sold 200 HVAC new systems, right? That's probably maybe okay. And then so that's 200 new systems that have the check that they got for free for the first year. Then we probably sold 200 new ones, right? So that's 400 that are due in that month. Then whatever was already due. And so I think our team always has this panic with like, something's wrong with the memberships again, because this random month has 600 AC tune-ups, due. And I'm like, no, it's probably right.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of people, they go, no, we want to do all our maintenances in March and September. That's great in theory. But like when I ran Shaw, we have 4,800 members. I can't do 4,800 in March and September. Plus, as I grow technicians, they start out as a maintenance tech, and I need something for them to do all year long. And so just because the list says do these in July and these in March or, August, whatever, doesn't mean I have to do them then. I can pull my list however I want. But people get this in their brain that, no, we want them all dumped in one. And in the long game, it doesn't make sense. And then you have your CSRs digging through to go, oh, well, I just saw Cassie last month. I don't need to go see her, but I haven't seen Heather in 6 months. And then they spend more time digging around in them.
Yep.
Yeah, you're right.
And I think that someone was telling me that recently someone on our team was like, this coach I was talking to said that we should have all of our maintenances done by May. And I was like, well, pump the brakes.
We have too many memberships for that to happen.
I know, Heather. I go, so then what are your maintenance techs doing for the rest of the summer? And she's like, oh. I'm like, that's probably somebody's plan, but that's not our plan, you know? But sometimes I think that's good reminders too, is like, just because you heard someone did it that way, or you heard that somebody does it completely opposite of you, that doesn't mean it's wrong. That just means that's what works for them. And I'm perfectly fine with knowing that what we do doesn't work for the most of people, you know?
Well, and you have to keep in mind too, whenever I talk to somebody about a process, it's a process that's growable, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you create a process that you can't grow, then you're going to have to keep changing the way you do things. And every time you change it, somebody's going to screw it up. And so if you just create things, and that's why I say, all do them in March and September might be great when you had 100 customers, but now what do you do when you have 400 or 1,000 or 4,500, or like we're doing a repair right now that's 5,600 memberships. They're not going to do it in a month.
No, that's crazy.
And then when we were at Shaw for springtime, because we were in Iowa, didn't warm up very fast. So we would get those double bowl blinds or a hunting blind and put them over the condenser, and our techs would get inside of them and zip them shut, because you can bring up the ambient temperature. So we could do them.
Yeah. Well, that's what she said when someone said that. I said, so we should have started our AC tune-ups in February. And she's like, okay, I get what you're saying. It's just not the strategy that's going to work for her. Plus, I also don't understand how you can explain to the customer who is in their heat's on, how do you create the sense of urgency that their AC is probably not going to work as well as it should when they still are in heat?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I agree. And if they're monthly memberships, well, if they pay me $10 a month, I don't want to do their first maintenance right now. I'm not doing their first maintenance for 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
And people are like, well, we do it now. Well, if you're doing it now, it's because they have a problem and they called you to get a cheap service.
And and that's not a maintenance. That was a service call. Yep. So, okay. Well, before we wrap up, I have some rapid fire questions for you.
Okay.
From ChatGPT.
You have to send me that.
It's funny. Okay. What's your go-to coffee order on a big training day?
Oh, go-to coffee order. My first choice is 7 Brew, and it is a blondie, which is a caramel vanilla hazelnut latte.
Sounds
7
good.
Brew is my favorite.
If you weren't in the trades world, what would you be doing?
I'd probably still be in manufacturing. I really loved manufacturing. Just a lot of it went away in this country.
My answer to that is that I feel like I should have, these are your rapid fire questions, not mine, but I feel like I should throw in real quick that I always say that I should have either been a trophy wife or a Mary Kay.
I was thinking I could see both of those for you, Cassie.
Leslie and she'll text me sometimes and she'll be like, why is this so hard? Because nobody wants to talk about the hard stuff, right, Heather? Like, it's always just like the business ownership and running businesses, and it's so easy. And she's like, why is this so hard? And I'm like, I don't know, but I feel like I could have done better at Mary Kay. No disrespect to Mary Kay. I'm sure that's hard.
I did it years ago.
The makeup, I feel like your customer, they're probably, while they may be upset if the makeup's not right, that is not as life altering, well, maybe to some people, but as, someone's AC or plumbing issue. And I just feel like maybe it would be a kinder experience sometimes.
Yeah, I can see that.
Oh boy.
I loved being a GM, and I don't mean this arrogantly, but I was good at it. I worked hard at being good at it. And I'm just not one that couldn't not work. Like, my way of shutting down is watching TV and reading, or watching TV and a game. And I always have TikTok, like I have 3 or 4 devices going at once to try to shut down.
That's same. And then when it's time to actually go to sleep, I'm like, I was laying in bed last night thinking, it's crazy.
I read and I have my mask on way low. And then as I get tired, I just slowly pull it down and shut my book.
That's awesome. Okay, last question. What is the best piece of advice you have ever received?
Wow. That's a great question. For rapid fire, that's tough. Best piece of advice. Okay, here's the one I say all the time in our household. I'm going to give you 2 of them. Okay. One is, don't get in a pissing match with a skunk.
Okay.
Because every time some customer's being ugly or you want to fire back, it's usually just better not to.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
And the College World Series is going on right now, and we are huge softball fans. And a coach told me years ago, girls have to have fun to win, and boys have to win to have have fun. And I think that's really kind of true at work too.
Girls have to have fun to win, and boys have to
win
and to
have to win to have fun.
Yeah, interesting. I got to think about that longer. And with that, we're going to leave you to ponder and think about that. Kathy, it was really awesome talking to you today. We'll make sure to leave in the show notes how to get a hold of you. And if you need help with any type of ServiceTitan, Housecall Pro, or any software integrations or implementation, or if you're ready to punch yourself smooth in the face because of your startup with any of them, give Kathy a call and she'll help you get it all going, because I trust and believe, and it's never too late. We were with ServiceTitan already for like 3 years when we had her come and help us with a few things, because I was at my wit's end with memberships and I was like, please come fast. So reach out to Kathy and let her know you heard her on the Power Women of the Trades podcast. And thanks again for being with us today.
You bet. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Kathy.
This has been Power Women of the Trades. Like what you hear so far? Leave us a review at Apple, and make sure to listen to our other episodes wherever you enjoy listening to your podcasts. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you on the next one.